At about midnight on April 12th, 2020, an EF 3.4 tornado came through Chattanooga, Tennessee. That means an intensity of between 136 and 200 miles an hour. That's how powerful that tornado was. It hit the home of Justin and Kelli Boitnott, and they're here with us today. Welcome to our program, Justin and Kelli.
Hi, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Also with us is Kevin Jones, who is a consultant, and he deals with issues like this. He's the go-to kind of guy when a homeowner like the Boitnotts have an issue in restoration and needs someone to help collaborate, perhaps with insurance issues. So this is a very important topic, and we're looking forward to your story and maybe some solutions, not just for yourself, but for those that watch this program. Can you tell us what happened on that night, April 12th, when that tornado came through?
Right. So that whole day had been at, risk of storms and some tornadoes. It was about midnight, and so we were going to bed. We thought the worst had passed. There'd just been some heavy rains and winds at various points that evening and night. We had the windows open because it was turning into a nice spring night. Nice temperatures, a little light drizzle, and we were getting into bed, and I just heard something strange outside. Everyone says it sounds like a freight train coming. It didn't sound like that. It just sounded odd. So I went to the window. The trees weren't moving. The leaves were just very, very lightly swaying. And I thought, well, it's not a tornado. And then right then you just felt the pressure change. And I just realized that it has to be a tornado. So I said, run. We didn't even have time to pick up our dogs. We had no warning. There were no sirens. There was no alert on the cell phone. We just ran. It took about 4 or 5 seconds to get from our bedroom to the under the stairs pantry that we've always talked about. If we had a tornado, we'd go to. And right as we were rounding the corner through the kitchen to get into the pantries when the windows blew in. So, we literally had 4 seconds to prepare ourselves. We stayed in the pantry for a few minutes, and it passed us almost as quickly as it came.
I can't explain the sounds that we were hearing. It was just so loud. It was literally just the sounds of our house being ripped apart because, some of the walls came off the foundations, holes in the roof, all the windows crashed in. There was so much glass, and we were screaming to hear each other, just like 1 to 2 feet away from each other. It was just absolutely terrifying.
And large pieces of furniture were blown through kitchen to the living room, the dining room, kitchen table went into the wall that we were in. Doors were getting blown off their hinges. I really thought I was going to die. It was that bad.
Looking back now, you can walk through and say, well, that was close, but you were okay. But in that moment, we did not know that we were okay. Like, we thought we were going to die.
Sounds like stuff from a movie, that type of experience, and most of us don't know what that's like. So what happened the next morning when you probably didn't sleep that night, but the next day you really saw the damage?
Yeah.
We got out to a friend's house to spend the night, and at 8 a.m. the next morning, immediately we called Allstate, our insurer, to let them know what had happened.
And as we drove up, Kelly's parents had driven down that morning from Knoxville, and we got to our neighborhood and really could see it for the first time, the light of day. Kelly started crying, and I just remember saying, "It's okay. We've got insurance. This is what we paid for." And I really genuinely believed at that time that it would be an effortless, albeit difficult process to rebuild a home, but that Allstate would take care of us.
So let's talk about your coverage. Obviously, you were current on your premiums.
Absolutely. Always paid, no problems with being late.
And the tornado damage was covered in your policy.
That's correct.
Okay. So what happened then? Did the work start? Did they start fixing your house?
Well, it's interesting. We live at the end of a cul-de-sac, and so we have several neighbors that we're all very close to, and it's just interesting to see how each homeowner had their home treated in a certain time, a certain way. But for us, we were told, well, that day when we called that Monday, your case has been expedited because you can't live in the house. So we need someone out there immediately. That person's coming out today. We waited all day. They never showed up. And so, they're running a little bit late. They'll be there the next day. Long story, essentially, they did not have an adjuster in Chattanooga. And so they had to find someone out of Texas, and he took 6 days to get there. During those 6 days, a lot of our neighbors were already having the home mitigated. Everything was getting torn out. Shingles were getting replaced, siding was getting replaced on our neighbors, and we're just sitting there waiting for someone to come out and just lay eyes on the property.
So what was the difference between your house and theirs with insurance coverage? Was it all the same basically?
Right, and this is something that we've repeatedly brought up to Allstate is, well, look at our neighbors, and they've been they very frequently say, well, you can't compare because you don't know what's in their coverage, but we are covered up to the full extent of our house, and if it's totaled up to 30% in addition to that, and we have full, wind damage coverage, so there really should not be too many differences in terms of scope and coverage.
Mm-hmm. So that was in April. Where have you been staying?
We're in a rental house right now, which is covered by additional living expense. And it's okay, but it's not home. And we feel very unsettled. Like, we lost all our furniture, so we haven't even bought a couch yet. I mean, we're just living in this empty house without furniture, basically.
With your dogs?
With our dogs.
With our dogs.
Yeah. Poor dogs.
Sorry if you hear them in the background.
Yeah. So Kevin, why don't you chime in? What is going on here? I mean, we all have homes and insurance coverage, and when something happens, we want things to be back to normal. What's going on?
Oh, first, let me say, because I know some folks are adjuster. I'm not an attorney. I'm a consultant. With 22 years of experience. I was contacted by a franchise organization that was involved in the job and just asked if I could help them because they were treating it as a Category 3 and it had been changed to a Category 2 by the insurance company, and that's how I got involved in it. So I talked to Justin, and they sent me the reports. I got a hold of some reports, and I just wrote up a long, I don't know how many page report for them based on the standard and some EPA regulations of why, it should be considered a Cat 3 water job. I have a passion for it because when I was asked to do it, because of the fact that, I was a restorer for 10 years. I've been an instructor for 12 years. And I've just started consulting recently because we see a lot of these types of things happen where things are changed or directed to change. And most time it's in an effort to save money. And I get that. There's restoration scam artists out there because of in storm situations, but in these situations, it's a vendor program, and you should trust your vendor's judgment. And the vendor was, my understanding, this is hearsay, but was told to change the category from a 3 to a 2 if they wanted to get paid.
So it took 16 days for a contractor to show up, 16 days. And of course, we want work to start right away. Where would you be now, Justin and Kelly, if the next morning they had sent someone out and they'd start working? Would we be saving money? Would you be back in your home?
Oh, it would have saved a lot of money. Every month that we stay here, they're having to pay our rent. And basically, our neighbors had very comparable damage to us. They had water mitigation out within 48 hours, removing all that wet drywall and material and flooring and even the cabinets. Our house was treated differently. We didn't even have a water restoration technician lay eyes on it until 16 days later, which, as I've now learned, the water, even if it ever was a 2, which it wasn't, would have progressed to a 3. And
so that we've been inside our neighbor's home. They've got all the sheetrock up. They just need to paint and put in the appliances, and they're ready to go.
Yeah, so their house is about finished, pretty close, and ours hasn't really started.
What's interesting about your story, and you shared some of this with me earlier, is you found the IICRC S500 water damage standard. You actually opened that up and started reading it and investigating what should be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm an attorney, and anytime there's a conflict, it's, well, let's go to the regulation. Let's go see what the case law is. Let's go to the source, and let's figure out, if we're still going to have a disagreement after we look at the source. And so very quickly found out that the S500 is what sets the standard. It's not binding. I wish it was binding, but it is the best practices of what the water mitigation companies are to abide by. And so from there, I've informed myself some more. There seems to be an overall lack within the industry sometimes of even understanding of the governing body or the S500 itself.
So Kevin, got two homeowners here who are looking at how we should do our work. What do you think about that?
I think it says a lot. I think it says that we need to do more as an industry to get our people educated, and our partners in the insurance business and the third-party administrators educated as well. I know from talking to Justin, they did have another company come out, and he wasn't sure about it being Category 3 because Category 3 could only be sewage in his mind. And that was a restoration contractor. And I'm like, oh my gosh. We need to be more aggressive in our marketing to our own industry as to proper training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Justin and Kelly, it's a shame you had to do all that. I don't think you really care about a category as long as your house gets repaired.
Right. We just need to feel safe when we get back in it. And experts are telling us you have hazardous material in your home. It's dirty, it's contaminated. We can't just ignore that and move back into a home that is covered in dirty water. We have a large pond behind our house that was in the direction of the tornado that picked up all that nasty water and feces and blew it into our house. We have an advanced auto parts store that was leveled less than a mile from our house in the path of the tornado. So, I mean, who knows what toxic materials were in that, picked up in the wind and brought into our house. There's no telling.
Mm-hmm. So, Justin, maybe you should change your specialty as a lawyer and help us out here. But
well, in hindsight, maybe I should have taken some insurance law classes in law school.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask this question. If you were to guess, how much actual work has been done compared to talk and testing and arguing?
We've talked for nearly 5 months at this point. I mean, it happened on Easter Sunday, so we're 4.5 months at this point. As far as progress to the house, Allstate has allowed the carpets to come out. They allow that to come out essentially as soon as the water mitigation company came out 16 days after the event. They also allowed for one wall to be taken out. It was one of the hardest hit walls in terms of water to see if there was mold. The thinking was if there's mold, it would indicate mold elsewhere in the home. If there's not mold, probably is okay. There's a little bit of mold, but it wasn't that widespread. And so they addressed that with whatever cleaning supplies they have, antimicrobial or whatever else they use. And that was the only wall that's come out. They have also taken out one. We have coffered ceilings in the living room. They've taken out one section of that ceiling. And that's it. Just to carpet that one wall and that one part of the ceiling.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Meanwhile, there is dirt, mud, and debris and glass shards in our walls. And for the longest time, they were saying that cannot come out.
So what is going to be in your future next few weeks, months? Do you see a resolution?
So Allstate initially determined that the entire claim with the first adjuster that came out 6 days later would be $54,000 as a minimum, just as a starting point, of course. But there was a supervisor within Allstate that looked at that report called Kelly, and essentially said, "Look, I can just look at pictures of your home and tell this is not even very close." And of course, $54,000 is a starting point, can go up, but we're not playing in the same game right now. Allstate paid for an engineer to come out. We also paid for our own engineer to come out. They assessed some more. There was a second adjuster that was sent out. They told us they're sending out a second adjuster because we'd had some personality disagreements with the first adjuster. It wasn't personality. I barely spoke to the gentleman. It's just that his estimate by Allstate's own admission was wrong.
Ludicrously low.
So second adjuster comes out. He puts it around 130,000. I think it's like 133. Still not in the same ballpark, but it's getting better. We, at that point, are also having disagreements over the categorization of water. At that point, we got in touch with Kevin. Kevin submitted an opinion. I spoke to one of the senior leaders, the senior managers in the claims department. He said, look, Mr. Jones is eminently qualified. I'm really impressed with his credentials, but he's just wrong. I said, well, are you IIC or CRC certified? He said, no, but I can read, Mr. Boitnott. I can read. And so he's, of course, implying that Mr. Jones and myself, that I guess we don't know what we're talking about, because he can just read the IIC or CS 500 himself and know what to do, which is, in his opinion, not take out any of the walls. We fought some more. Eventually, Allstate agreed to send out an IEP. There were several reasons why an IEP was not appropriate in that situation. We got another report from another IEP that came out and actually wrote a report saying why their profession would not be appropriate to look at the walls. The amount of testing that would be required to fully assess what went on within the home would be cost prohibitive. Allstate went ahead, ignored that opinion, got their own IEP. That gentleman did a few swabs in the home. I saw 3 swabs. He might have done more, but it was just a few swabs of the entire home. I think Allstate's guess was that by just doing a few swabs, he probably wouldn't find any contaminants, and then they could rely upon his expertise to then deny. Unfortunately for them, and fortunately for us, he did find contaminants. At that point, Allstate said, you know what, we will pay for everything to be taken out. We're going to take out all the walls that were affected. And I thought that we were really making good ground. That seemed to be a break. Since that time, we found out that, take everything out does not include the floors. It's just beyond my comprehension how, you could have all 4 walls in a room plus the ceiling be hit by debris, but the floor, somehow gravity doesn't exist during the tornado, or after that, the floor isn't affected. We've had several individuals who are IICRC certified come out and say, yes, it is category 3. And that's currently the fight with Allstate right now. They won't allow that. They're demanding that we immediately begin remediation and allow them to begin remediation as is without the floors. And that if any delay occurs in the future, because we're holding it up right now, that any other subsequent damage is on us or not. They're not going to pay for that.
So interesting stuff. The fact that you're fighting this and waiting is crazy, but it's something you have to deal with. I hear your dogs in the background. They're probably saying, we want back to our house.
Yeah.
I understand that you recorded your home recently. You walked through and those wet floors are, there's standing water.
Exactly.
And you put it on, I believe, Facebook or social media.
Yeah.
People have been watching that?
Absolutely. And I just looked at it before we started recording this. There was just over 4,400 views. What caused me to put that up was Allstate called us on either Monday or Tuesday night of this week, so 2 or 3 days ago.
Tuesday night.
And they said, it is our fault for the delays. They said, you have delayed too long, which is, as I just explained, insane that they initially offered 54,000. They admit now their latest estimate is just at 200,000. So, but apparently that delay to get from 54,000 to 200 is our fault. So we are at fault for the delay. They have paid for it. Also has paid for 4 tarps. The roof is not off and not suffered serious, significant damage, but there's still a lot of shingles missing. Even some of the decking is missing. So there are multiple holes in the roof that allow water to come in. It needs a tarp, and we notified Allstate last Tuesday. So that would be 8 days ago now. The tarp was coming off. We got no response. We followed up with them Friday, 3 days later. They did not commit to put a tarp on. They said, we put on 4 tarps already. This is getting ridiculous, which I agree. It is ridiculous. We've had to wait this long. But again, it's not our fault. And so we went ahead and just paid for a tarp on our own because we have to mitigate against further damage to our house. We have that duty contractually, but just out of the interest to our home, we need to save our home. But Allstate said on this call Tuesday night, you've delayed. We are not paying for that tarp. And Mr. Boitnott, all this delay, we'd hate to see that water come in and damage the home further. So you better start working with us. It felt just shy of a threat to say, take what we were giving you because we're not going to further address your home, and our inaction is going to cause further damage to your home, and we're not going to pay for that. Mm-hmm. So at this point, I got off that phone call, drove straight to the home. We'd had a large thunderstorm come through, and I was already very upset after that phone call because I felt like we were being threatened, and just went in the front door, and it was like every room felt like it had a shower head turned on. I mean, that much water.
Allstate has told us they're not going to pay for a new tarp, and they're not going to pay, potentially, they say we've jeopardized our claim to pay for any further water damage that happens as a result. All right. They told us this on the night it was raining in our house. Like, we didn't have any warning. We got a tarp up as quickly as we could, but there's water damage. So right now, because Allstate has already agreed to remove a certain amount of Category 3 material, it's on them. But if that new water causes mold damage to occur, those costs transfer from them to us personally, because of course we have a $5,000 mold remediation limit, like most people do. So we either act very quickly to remove the walls and prevent that damage from occurring, or we keep fighting to say the scope is incorrect because you haven't included floors. If we get the walls remediated now, we'll never get coverage for the floors, because they'll say, nope, they did what they said they were going to do and now they're gone, so the floors don't need to go. But they do, and experts have told us that, multiple experts. So we need to agree to the scope now, today, and get the walls out today to care for the house. But
and they know that they have us. They know that we either have to agree immediately to forego the floors to save the walls, or if we try to save the walls and the floors, we forgo all the mold and stuff that's going to happen, just later on.
Catch 22 indeed.
It's very time sensitive, and I honestly don't know what we're going to do right now.
So, public opinion. Obviously, your family and friends are on your side, but from your posting on social media, your story, what are the comments like? Whose side are people taking? What's going on with that? Have you been following that?
Yeah, I mean, people seem horrified when they see the state of the house and the fact that it's still like this 5 months almost after the event is unconscionable. And I think people see that.
And, I want to be clear with this. I'm not saying Allstate's a terrible company. I'm not saying this is indicative of the way they usually treat people. All I can document is what is happening to our home.
Yeah, this is how our claim is being handled.
And, I made that clear in the comment after that post that, I'm not saying anything about Allstate. People can view what is happening to our home and make their own decisions. So far, all of those comments that I've seen have all been negative towards Allstate. Kevin,
any final words of advice from you? I know we haven't talked to you too much, but
no, that's all right.
You're
not my story, but
you're involved now. Yeah.
But it's just the anger that builds up in me and why I decided to start doing this. Like I said, I've been doing this a while, and it seems, and not just that company, but in general, a lot of, and I'm going to use a word here that's probably going to start a fire, but a lot of bullying sometimes. And I've heard a lot said throughout the industry, particularly from franchise systems, that, well, it's their ball, so we have to play by their rules. But there's got to be a meeting where what a restoration contractor is saying needs to be done needs to be respected, and because we're the professionals, we're the ones that do this. And ultimately, the boss is the Boitnotts, it's the policyholder. The insurance company may be paying the bill, the restoration contractor may be doing the work, but they're the ones that should be making the ultimate decisions along with their adjusters. But the adversarial relationship's got to go. It's just got to go. But I remember hearing in a meeting, and I won't throw out any names, but a person saying that why the franchise company struggled for so long, and then all of a sudden their volume went up, and it said it was when we stopped telling them what to do and just did what they wanted us to do. And the person that ultimately suffers is the policyholder. And that's not with every insurance company. I don't mean that at all, but there's just a lot of people trying to get their piece of the pie. And ultimately, who we're supposed to be taking care of is people like these people. And yeah, it fires me up. And I'm probably not going to be very popular, but I've just decided I'm going to do whatever I can. If I have to get a public adjuster's license to fight this, I'll do it. So yeah. It is what it is.
So at least 3 times in this process for us, we've had a professional come in and say, here's the scope of what needs to be done. Allstate has gone back to that professional and said, no, this is what we'll pay for. And it's not the same.
Right.
And that seems so backwards and so unethical to me. It's mind blowing, but apparently that's industry standard, or that's standard practice.
It happens. It sounds like it doesn't sound right as well. And Kevin's right. It's your decision. It's your home. Unfortunately, we're not seeing this play out the way it would benefit you. But thank you both for your time today, and Kevin as well. And maybe we'll check in later and see how you guys are doing down the road, and maybe there'll be a happy ending to the story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.